Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. On this week's podcast, Tony Liebel joins us from New York City, where he is CEO of a tech startup called Buzr. The company's product, called Buzr Pro, was designed to replace outdated apartment access systems by only requiring the user to install the Buzr Pro smart device hardware into the individual apartment or condo wall unit. Tony and his co-founder, Jeremy Walker, met at Cornell Tech, where they began their collaboration. In May 2020, Buzr was one of 4 student companies that won the highly competitive Cornell Tech Startup Awards and received $100,000 in pre-seed funding to pursue their startup after graduation. Along with the funds, the company was provided a co-working space at Cornell's Roosevelt Island, New York campus and access to a support team of industry leaders and executives in computer science and engineering. Buzr Pro is expected to ship this winter, and I really wanted to have Tony Liebel on to talk about the product, his backstory, and to find out where this is going to be a good fit for the industry. Tony, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yes, thanks, Jeremy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to continue to spread the good word of Buzr and how we're helping to help New Yorkers and any apartment residents.
Well, as someone who lived in New York City for 11 years, and I used to wear that as a badge of honor, and I've been away for longer than I live there now, back in the Midwest where I grew up. But I loved my years in New York, and I have to say one of those frustrating elements was that ancient device that was on every apartment wall to let people in. Sometimes you're just shutting it up by letting people in that shouldn't come in. But now I've been, like I said, gone so long that the tech available at that time was nothing like it is today. I'm sure that as someone who went to a school where you're focused on tech innovation, seeing that outdated device on the wall must have been a huge motivating factor behind Buzr Pro. Can you talk about how the idea came about, where you saw this opportunity and the ability to make something that was so seated in the apartments of New York City and the condos of New York City, make that something that can be fixed?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Buzr story starts long before my time at Cornell Tech. I was a management consultant for about 5 years with a firm called Alvarez and Marsal, where I was traveling every week, Monday through Thursday, for work. And I became very familiar with these intercom systems because I was the one that was having problems with them. So while I was traveling, I, just like everybody, was ordering packages and trying to give access to my unit in New York. But because I wasn't there to accept the packages, I was coming home every week to stickers on the front door from UPS or FedEx saying, "Hey, we missed you. We will try again tomorrow." And then tomorrow came, I still wasn't home, and they try again the next day. And the third day would come around, and the package would ultimately be sent back to the sender. And that was just one of the many frustrations. The other one was I was an Airbnb host in my home in Gramercy Park on the east side of Manhattan. And I couldn't get people in. I couldn't get my guests into my building remotely. So I'd be wherever I was for work. And while I had a smart lock for my units, I think I had an August lock at the time, I couldn't get them into that front door of my walk-up building. So I was getting very creative. I was giving the keys to the bodega owner down the street, and I even was putting the keys in the cracks of the sidewalk.
Oh my God.
So not the most welcoming experience especially for an international traveler, to come to finally make it to their home in New York for the week or many weeks and then have troubles getting the keys. And there are even times which I'm not proud of that they weren't able to get in and we got to scramble to find them different accommodations.
Oh, that just tells you so much right there. I can't imagine being one of those travelers, let alone obviously the other side of things as the owner, like you're describing. So you're dealing with a pretty standardized technology that you're replacing there. Those buzzers seem to be the same everywhere you go. Is that pretty much the case, that they're one kind of technology, one brand, or are there multiple brands of this old thing
Yeah,
that's in the wall?
yeah. So the technology is it's based on very similar premises, the same premise, where especially the old analog systems, which were invented in the late 1800s and 1890s,
Wow.
they communicate in very similar ways. But, and I still don't know why, they did spread into many different brands over the years. And they all communicate in slightly different ways, unfortunately for us. And that's where a lot
Okay.
of our IP is being able to communicate on the existing wires and on the existing system without making any changes to the system, other than just changing out that control interface called the intercom station in the residence itself.
Okay. So you have essentially low voltage wiring coming into that unit that's on the wall, currently in the wall.
Exactly. Yes.
And so it's what you've developed is a really sleek looking replacement for that, whereas the old things like this plastic yellowed looking
Yeah,
device that
I have one right here. I'll grab it for you. So this is what is currently on the wall in many apartments in New York City. It's called the intercom station. This is a fancy one because it has a fake wood trim on the front. But yeah, this is what you would find in almost any apartment in New York City without a doorman. Be it a lower income community where the property hasn't been renovated, or even very fancy lofts in nicer parts of town where there have been major renovation projects, but because these are so ingrained in the building, not only from a use point, but also from the install process, they don't get changed too often.
right. So then when you're thinking of what do we do with this thing, or um, it what how early on were you thinking I can be a part of this change? I guess where does Cornell Tech kind of fit
Yeah.
into this, and finding a project that's like, hey, this is something that's been bothering me for a while now.
Yes. So from a personal standpoint, I am incredibly motivated by helping people's daily lives. And I was always looking for a way to do that. And a product like this is something that impacts people's daily lives. They interact with it very frequently. Rarely do you have the opportunity to improve on something that's in someone's home, and so ingrained in someone's home. And what was even more exciting is for the city of New York, the people that live in these buildings are oftentimes the decision makers. They're doing their absolute best work in whatever field they're in, and they're still encumbered by this very outdated technology. So being able to benefit people's lives, improve people's lives through a really simple and really sleek device was very personally motivating.
And so then I know we're going to kind of get to more of your backstory a little bit later, but where do you start with the process in your own mind that I am going to be able to make a change with this thing? Like, this is something, not only is it theoretically possible, and maybe and definitely would be great for New Yorkers to have this change in my
Yeah.
own personal life and all that, to where you're consulting on a business at the time. Did you think I could? This is a great idea. I just need to find like a tech partner, or maybe we could work together on this thing.
Yeah, very much so. So I went to Cornell Tech with the sole intention of getting Buzr off the ground. I had been working on it kind of on the side and discovering what the market needed and how big the market was. But I never was going to get it over the finish line without significant technical expertise and significant backing from just a network of prop tech experience. So I went to Cornell Tech to get my MBA, which was a nice side product of doing this.
Okay.
To find Jeremy Walker, a technical co-founder who's brought IoT products to market in the past, and then win the startup awards.
And was Jeremy also a student there, or how does that play into? How do you find him?
Yes. So Cornell Tech is a graduate program for
Okay.
entrepreneurial minded, really engineers. There is a small MBA cohort associated with it for MBAs that are either trying to become product managers, is what is typical, or business-minded people that are trying to break into tech entrepreneurship. So the way Jeremy and I met, I was enrolled in a class called what was it called? It was called it was basically an IoT class. We were learning how to develop hardware products, and we met. I actually walked him around New York City, showing him the many problems that people have. If you walk around New York City today, you still see notes on people's doors, either from UPS or even from the residents themselves, saying, "UPS, stop trying to deliver here. Like, call my cell, and I'll let you in."
Right.
And we did that together, and formed a partnership. And we've been working together since that was in November of 2019. Worked together to do the proof of concept at Cornell Tech, and do a small alpha test. And then over the last year, we've grown the company to about 15 engineers.
Okay. So let's walk through the product a little bit more then, as far as what the idea for, where did you hope to go? Obviously, I hear where the problem is. There are products like Ring doorbells in the suburbs that can kind of do the things that you hope to do in a New York apartment or condo or co-op. What is the, do you see any limitations in terms of replacing that unit? Obviously, getting into those buildings, getting those partnerships with building owners and that sort of thing would be a huge hurdle. But in terms of the tech itself, do you just take one off the wall and say, okay, here's what we're dealing with in terms of the wire. Now we can just make this thing smart, or what's the process starting point for you guys developing the tech?
So is the question about development or more around how we install it and how the user uses it?
Yeah, I think development on the idea of what can this product, what do we hope this product will be able to do?
Sure.
Are there things that it's not going to be able to do just because of the limitations of what how you replace that one item technically? And yeah. I know that there are challenges just getting them in there and sold and everything, but we'll cover that as we go here. That's the MBA part of what you're doing, I'm sure, the marketing and the connections and the relationships. But just from a technical standpoint, is it so easy once you know what you want to do that the wires that are coming into it, like once it's connected, it can pretty much be as smart as you want it to be and connect to the internet and phones and things like that? Or what do you see as the opportunity there in terms of the tech development in the beginning, and how does it kind of move along?
Sure. So development is essentially frozen at this point. We just started our manufacturer search about 4 weeks ago and expect to be in market in January or February of this year. So the technology is limited in the current functions of what is currently in the building. So because we changed nothing in the building other than the control interface, we don't add any additional features down at the front door, right? So just like Nest thermostat doesn't make your your AC that doesn't include heat all of a sudden be able to do heat. It only changes how you control it. So from the most basic level, what we do is we do talk, listen, and buzz from anywhere.
Okay.
So by getting onto those wires, there's between 2 and 6 wires that come out of the wall. We can take those current functions and bring them online. And then there's some additional functions that we're really excited about that the system didn't have before, which are virtual keys for your guests, your housemates, your packages, direct integrations with service providers, so companies like UPS and FedEx, who have one in three packages don't get delivered on their first attempt in New York. 90,000 packages a day go missing or stolen in New York. They obviously would like for those problems to be reduced. So we'd love to integrate directly with them to open the door, and then also direct integrations with companies that have a strong tie to the front door in regards to their customer experience. So companies like WAG and Rover, where they would like to be able to get into the front door easily to come walk your dog, or a company like Hello Alfred, who tries to be the butler to your apartment, but if they can't get into the front door, that they're not that great of a butler. They're not as useful as a butler.
Right.
And then another feature we do is we do some environmental monitoring. So we have a connected thermostat in the device, and a connected thermometer in the device that will allow the user to see the temperature inside, as well as compare it to the outside temperature. In a lot of municipalities, including New York City, there's laws around what the temperature inside the building should be based on the outside temperature, because the building heat is controlled in the basement by building management. And there's two scenarios. One is the landlord is very attentive and wants to make sure that their tenants are heated the way they should be. And what they do, because they don't know the temperature in their units, they turn the heat all the way up. When middle of winter in my Upper East Side apartment, I have all of my windows wide open because they are blasting the heat. Obviously,
I've been there myself.
Yeah, so
I know what you're talking about.
So annoying, but also incredibly costly to building management. So we're giving them some visibility into that problem, and then also letting them know if they are underheating their building and opening themselves up to litigation or fines.
Right. Well, we'll continue our conversation with Tony Liebel after a short break.
Do you want superior smart home automation at a great value? Shelly Wi-Fi relays by Alterco Robotics cover DC to line voltage, allowing you to control lights, outlets, appliances, garage doors, pumps, and much more. There are Shelly sensors and power measurement devices to help you measure temperature, humidity, lux, or motion, and electrical consumption from single wire to 3-phase with neutral. You can use Shelly with a licensed driver for Control 4, Elon, or other premium systems, as well as your customer's existing hub, voice assistant, or any platform that accepts REST, MQTT, or CoAP. Shelly can make IoT very easy. Available now at Blackwire, City Electric Supply, and Worthington, or at shellyusa.com.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Tony Liebel, CEO and co-founder of Buzr. Tony, we were just starting to talk about some of the features that you're able to add into these buildings, and you mentioned virtual keys, and I understand that the function that you can do is limited to the talk, listen, and the buzzing button. So I just am having a hard time understanding, get how maybe you'd be able to remotely buzz someone in from your phone. Is that kind of what virtual keys are? Is there something more automated? How does that work?
No, exactly. So at most basic level, we give a third party the ability to operate that buzz open button. But there's a lot of security around that, and it also depends on what type of what profile a person is trying to get into the building. So if it's a close friend who comes over every other day to let your dog out, you as the administrator of the device can send them a full access key where they can buzz themselves in at any time. And then on the other end of the spectrum, for let's say a UPS, we have direct API integrations into their backend, where we would know that a package is meant to arrive at the front door. When they do arrive and scan the package, ring the doorbell, the door buzzes automatically for them.
Right.
And speaking of the security part of it, we're a proud member of IOXT, which is a new protocol and certification service meant to I don't know if you guys have come across them yet. They
Not
their
yet.
tagline is the Internet of Secure Things.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, so as you get this product out in the world, then obviously you're part of the process. Like I said, you're the MBA now, and developing that business and building the partnerships. What do you see as your roadmap as far as getting sales accomplished once the product is manufactured and you're trying to get into these established buildings? Obviously, you see the need, and I'm sure that owners of buildings will see it, but it's just such a bunch of different types of dealing with supers, you're dealing with building owners. What's that whole process look like for you going forward?
Yeah, so I would say we have three categories of customer. We have the residents themselves, where we take an approach like a Nest thermostat or a Ring doorbell, where they can install it on their own in a building that they have permission to install it, or the landlord hasn't dictated that a change like this would be a problem.
Right.
So it is meant to be installed by anybody. If you can use a screwdriver, you can install this device. Our app
Okay.
walks you through the installation. We took a lot of inspiration from the Nest thermostat.
Hmm.
And then our second category is obviously the building management or building ownership. We are getting a lot of traction with buildings in the Class B and Class C. So buildings that are not brand new. Obviously, they would have to have an old intercom system. There's some beautiful technology out there for smart systems, smart access systems. So Latch, you may be familiar with. They went public today. Butterfly MX is another New York City-based system. They are not the perfect fit for every building, and it comes down. The reason that they are not the perfect fit, and oftentimes comes down to their installation cost. I was speaking with a landlord just the other day. They had decided to go with Latch. They were fine with the hardware cost, which is considerably more than ours also. But then when they went out to get it installed, they go through a third-party service to find an installation partner. And for a 10-unit building, they were quoted $150,000 for rewiring, which just isn't exciting. Definitely is not doable for a lot of these small buildings.
Right.
And that's where we come in. Right? We work on the existing wiring, on the existing infrastructure. We connect to whatever Wi-Fi is available, be it the residence's Wi-Fi or the building-wide Wi-Fi, and bring the whole system online. We're the cheapest way for a building to get to advertise as having a virtual doorman. Right.
And for an individual homeowner or apartment dweller, if they were able to get permission and do this installation themselves, what is the upfront hardware cost for them?
We're retailing it at $229 for the hardware, and our app is free for any function that they previously had, but that is now online. So the talk, listen, buzz, and ring notifications will always be free. For those additional features like the virtual keys and the third-party integrations, we charge $7 per month.
Okay. All right. That's not bad at all for that upfront cost, especially. And it's really cool that you don't just automatically make it a monthly fee. So those who just don't want another one won't be able to say no because they get those basic functions. But So then you're looking for, you said, a manufacturing partner at this point. So you're confident that everything is going to line up on that and be able to hit your deadline, your shipping dates of early 2022.
Yes. So we did push back our ship date. It was originally this fall because of the worldwide MCU shortage, chip shortage.
Yeah.
We had to push it back. We weren't able to secure our MCUs in time, but we have secured them, and according to all of our estimates, we're on time for January, February of shipping. Okay,
great. And it's interesting. It's like we've been hit with one thing after another, obviously with COVID, and then this tech challenge with the chips and all that, but and not to mention just supply chain delays. But what about the process? And you're in this critical point of product development, kind of ironing everything out right in the middle of COVID-19 and New York City, of all places, where everything really got locked down. How did that affect you?
Yeah. So we went almost entirely remote. Of our 15 full-time engineers, I've met maybe 5.
Okay.
And same with Jeremy. However, Jeremy and I were incredibly disciplined. We did not do. Basically, made it. We're able to work together in a very safe way at Cornell Tech's maker space called the Maker Lab, and do a lot of the hardware work on our own. Anything that physically needed to be done, we did together.
Okay.
And then we also benefited, I think, pretty greatly from COVID and the abundance of talent that was available, and people's willingness to now work remotely. Right? Most of our engineers, while they might be in the region of New York City, don't necessarily live in New York yet. We would love to bring them in someday, but right now they're remote. So yeah, that for a company that was not in market yet, was not installing anything in people's homes, which would have been a nightmare trying to do during a pandemic, which wouldn't have been possible during a pandemic. Right. We were okay.
Yeah, as a publication and podcast that covers the professional installation market, the custom integration market, they were fortunate in this industry to be essential workers out there doing networks and home entertainment systems and that type of thing. But if you're a new product trying to get your foot in the door, literally, that's a whole other challenge in New York, especially. But and speaking of New York, this isn't just a New York product. It's very much about some of these more like these larger cities, older cities that would have this type of old technology that needs to be replaced. Correct? There's
Absolutely.
more than just New York market for you to tackle.
Absolutely.
Where else would you see it being a good fit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the older the city, the older the buildings, the older the intercom systems. So we can operate anywhere. Most of those old cities are not in the U.S. Obviously, we're not a very old country. So Europe is a focus for us, but as well as all of our old cities in the U.S. So San Francisco, Los Angeles, most of the Northeast, and DC, and Chicago. I did a bottoms up market sizing of 9 older U.S. cities, kind of the ones I just mentioned, and there were about 6 million apartments that could use this, that could use a Buzr Pro, and that's just the metro areas. These buildings exist everywhere. Really, just any apartment building that has a common front door and no doorman that controls access to it likely has an older intercom system.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I know we're kind of jumping back a little bit here, but I really wanted to kind of touch on your background and Jeremy's background. And you're clearly the business side of this, and he's the tech side of this. You mentioned Jeremy had done some other startups prior, I guess, to Cornell Tech. Is that correct? Or was it while he was there?
Not other startups, but other IoT products. So he is a multidisciplinary engineer, if I said that correctly the first time, who has brought some devices to market before this. So not in the smart home space. I think they were more in the smart office space. But yeah, sorry, I don't know where my next thought was going there.
That's okay. So you had confidence that he had some chops when you guys started working together. Now, were you ever, prior to just seeing this one need on this the Buzr Pro product, were you a tech kind of minded guy, even though your focus is on the business end of things? Where did that? Yeah, was it just this one thing?
No. So I've always been a tinkerer. My first job aspiration as a little kid was to be a toy maker, and then when I discovered that the word inventor existed, I wanted to be an inventor. And I definitely just generally handy guy. Restored an old Mercedes recently in Queens. The first iteration of Buzr we call Buzr Mini, was an Arduino, a Raspberry Pi with some relays hanging out of the wall in my apartment. This was in probably 2016 or 2017. That was built by me after taking a look at YouTube videos.
Okay.
But then Jeremy is also kind of cross functional. He has a lot of experience and a lot of interest in growing into operational roles. So he's leading a lot of our manufacturing search as well as our design for manufacture currently.
Okay.
So we work really well together and go back and forth across our disciplines.
Nice. Okay. And before we started recording, you were mentioning that you were a pretty successful soccer player as well. So you are very you're a Renaissance man. You've got a lot of things going on there, an athlete as well.
Yeah. I was a goalkeeper. I'm 6'3" and about 220 pounds. Well, I was 220 pounds when I was an athlete. Probably a bit more now. I played soccer my whole life. My dad is from Germany. He came over as a professional tennis player, and athletics were a big part of growing up. I think I learned a lot about teamwork and definitely a lot about competition through my time I spent at the IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida, and then I played Division I at the University of San Diego. Now goalkeeping is no longer my sport. It was a little bit too hard on the body. I've picked up the softer sports of tennis and golf.
Nice. Yeah, I made the mistake of starting to play soccer for the first time when I was in my 40s, which is not a great idea. The heart's not really ready for that. So it was just because my kids were starting to play and I was coaching them, and I needed some credibility in the game. Since I'd grown up as a baseball player, it's not exactly the same thing. But I definitely took to goalkeeping because you could use your hands. And I said I was really good at that, but it was generally against like 10-year-old girls. So I don't think that really counts. Once I got a equally aged and sized male, not to mention, I'm sure a female counterpart as well, that was the right size. It was a whole other ball game. Watch your teeth on those,
Yeah.
So then that what this tells me though is that you're not a native New Yorker. So you're in this market, and I know how it is. You get in there and you're just all about being in New York. So what just kind of as a wrap up, I'm kind of curious what got you to New York from Florida, then California. What brought you to the city?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't know if I've reflected enough to really know why, other than wanting to be around the best of the best. I had that experience at IMG and at San Diego with athletics. And as I was entering this next stage of my life, my professional career, I knew that I would be best able to grow if I was surrounded by the best. And I recently came across a quote by E.B. White, the late author in the 40s, about New York and how there's three types of New Yorkers, and it resonated with me. One is the native New Yorker, the second is the commuter, and then the third is the one that comes to make change. And that is exactly how I felt when I got to New York. It was how can I make an impact on all of these people that I'm so motivated by, so impressed by. How can I make their lives better, and how can I make an impact on a city that really makes an impact on the entire world on a daily basis?
Well, I hope that is something that you're able to be successful with. I think it's a cool product. Buzr Pro is a great opportunity to modernize the last piece of some of these buildings in New York that are getting, everyone living in them has great technology, but then there's this one thing in there that doesn't really match up. So congratulations on the idea, and the follow through sounds like it's getting close to being a reality. We'll look forward to seeing the product in winter 2022. Tony, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Tony Liebel is CEO and co-founder of Buzr. You can learn more about the brand at getbuzr, that's BUZR.com. And that wraps up today's show. If you're new to Residential Tech Talks, please subscribe to the weekly show and consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Also, check out all the latest residential tech news at the magazine's website, restechtoday.com, where you can also subscribe to the bi-monthly magazine and to our Tuesday and Friday newsletters. Until next time, please stay safe, stay inspired, and let us know if you have a great story to tell.
Residential Tech Talk, lighting specialist to Residential Tech Talk.
Home automation device, home or smart house.